Hi, this is Ryan. Yes, it is Mr. Ryan Michael Poe. I was so curious to know, because the angels told me a long time ago. I said, what's my real last surname? God, I said, what's my real last surname? And he said, Ryan. I can't tell you much about that. But they changed your last surname on documents a long time ago. But then he told me a bunch of other stuff that was real cool. Oh, buddy, he sure did. And what he told me, I had men in my family come over on voyages, and at the time, you don't have it called that today. They were in Walsburg, Virginia. Walsburg. You have Williamsburg, Virginia today. You forsake to remember or tell people you had a Walsburg, Virginia. W-A-H-L-S-B-E-R-G. Walsburg, Virginia. Well, some say, well, you know, and someone asked, where'd you get your Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe? Colonel? They don't want to call him Colonel, but hey, you know, Angel said, Ryan, that KFC recipe kind of smells bad. I said, why? They said, because, you know what happened? You had been in government. They had slaves, African Americans, living in their homes, and they made recipe for chicken, and they stole that recipe from a black slave family, and they sold it. They had a white man colonel, called the Colonel, represent the whole chicken industry of KFC, and that recipe that was really made by African American slaves. Well, that's what the angels told me. Just like Walsburg, Virginia, you know, and other things, really, a lot of other things. But I said, whoa. He said, yep. And you know, Ryan has Church's chicken. And you know, guess what? Get this one. Brian doesn't have a memory craving for Church's chicken. But KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Brian has a memory craving for that one. Which isn't good, because that means I used the added ingredients that were addictive. When there's also something else. God said if we want to get down to world war efforts, you know, there's things that your government put in Alaska that's wrong covenant with your society and people here and the states of your global America's country, continent. You put things in Alaska, and Ryan doesn't know exactly what you put there. He doesn't. But if there's things there that God said is ill covenant with the people living in the territories of those states, regions near that state, Alaska, and there's something there. It's like a GEO, hidden operations military. Yeah, a GEO, hidden military operations kind of thing. But, you know, there's a lot really going on. And, well, one thing God said I want to mention is, you've got a bunch of government people in the states filming child pornography. You have government men filming pornography with children and then putting it on secret internet channels and portals. Okay, on the internet. And your whole courtrooms of the United States persecute. That's a form of pedophilism. It takes a pedophile, an adult, wanting to sexually make actions with a youth. And you persecute that in the court of law in the United States all over. And you have men in government filming it. as pornography. And you have it hidden on its secret internet channels and portals. And Ryan said, God, how are they doing that? He said, Ryan, you had Virginia intelligence a long time ago. And, well, they started using it and abusing it in the 60s into the 70s. And later on, they formed a community, a collection of their own government officers, pretty much. And they started displaying whatever they wanted on the internet. So, there's an issue. Because I have children out there, you know, God said, I have a few children out there in that pornography wondering why they're being used sexually like that. But, you know, the other thing was, I was really wondering, how are they hiding it? Well, he said it took your Virginia intelligence agency to hide it in secret channels and portals on your internet. And, you know, people know about Virginia intelligence. It's like the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, which is nearly the brains of the mass computer vice and the government world of servicemen. That's how Ryan understands it. And, oh, by the way, let's get into the two towers. America government, Angels also told me, if you don't believe this shit about child pornography, you okay? And you've got government men filming it with children, producing sexual actions and indecencies, government men doing it, filming it and then putting it on secret internet channels and portals. And who's hiding it on there? The VIA, the Virginia Intelligence Agency. It's a lot responsible for it. They call themselves brothers. The guys doing that call themselves brothers because they're kind of collecting the same idea about the people in the community here in the U.S. So there's a secret code word for those particular men. They called themselves the brothers before, God said. So your two towers in New York City, they fell on purpose. So what Angel said, our own government flew a helicopter into our Pentagon for a reason, and they brought 2 jet planes into your 2 towers in New York City on purpose, and they had Islamic men do it. And the reason, and they were willing to, the Islamic men were willing to. Well, I said, why'd they do it? Well, God said, you know, your government was selling secrets out of those towers, Ryan. They were selling secrets and ideas of, well, some kind of form of, like this witchcrafty symbolism idea out of it. And they used the Islamist men who were willing to do it because it was a Ponzi scheme to get our United States military to give us a reason to be over there in the Middle East. A Ponzi scheme. You have a chessboard, Ponzi. A Ponzi scheme. That's a chess move, metaphorically, to get your military over there in the Middle East. But, you know, there's that one. So, take care. Oh, and by the way, George W. Bush doesn't make that decision. The President of the United States is more of a spokesman, a representative. He has men and military intelligence officers helping him with views. The President is it's kind of a spokesman for the United States, and he's not the real brains of the operation. You have men in intelligence and government, such as the Pentagon and the Central Intelligence Agency, and they help lead him in ideas, you know, and he's just the spokesman for the United States. So George W. Bush, he wasn't responsible. Some say George W. Bush, no. Well, it wasn't him. It was his military officers above him. Then you have a Novia program. Well, Novia. Okay, it's not Nova like in Short Circuit, the movie. It's Novia. Novia soldiers. Noviet soldiers. N-O-V-I-E-T. N-O-V-I-A. Novia. And Noviet. And what a Noviet soldier is, it's an undercover operations and a mixture of militaries from what Ryan heard. between Russian soldiers and American soldiers, in some, well, in a sense. And a bunch of news, but you had a man in your CIA years ago. I think around the 1970s. He was an undercover operative. They went to Russia as an undercover agent. And God told me about what happened. He had an apartment there that he was renting, and while he was in the apartment, he was being surveillanced by Russian government. They were listening to him in his room. And they ended up finding out his cover. They took him and murdered him. They made a book. They took the skin that he had on his body, some of it. They tanned it, hided it, and they dyed it. Dyed the skin a color and made it a leather binding for a book. And inside the book, it was ideas, things, stuff in there that had to do with the person. But he had a missing person a long time ago that worked for the CIA. He's an undercover operative and lived in Russia, and he was found out under surveillance. They ended up killing him, taking the skin from his body, making a leather binding for a book, but they dyed it, and they sent it back over to America. And it was pretty much their way of saying, we found your soldier, we don't want to tell you what happened, but you have a book. That's what they did with them. Stuff like that. And, some people, if you don't want to believe that, that whole idea in theory is real relative to where PCP originally was found. After the Allied forces invaded Nazi Germany, they did a lot of research and findings, and they found a chemical recipe. And Nazi Germany created the best recipe for that particular drug. It was to help their soldiers during combat and warfare. And when America brought it back over here, some of your scientists and chemical people reconfigured the recipe for the original drug, and then they released it as a street drug called PCP here. And that's when people started doing all these crazy whack things. So that's how real that, bunch of stuff. But anyways, take care.